And the news never stops. To tell us about the latest in politics in the city and across the world is political analyst Lee Bynes. Nice to have you back with us.
Good to be back. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Okay.
So much going on. We were just talking beforehand that there's never a day without a controversy or a question. Let's start with the White House and let's talk about the president's visit with the president of France yesterday, Emmanuel Macron. They seem to get along. You always kind of wonder what's in the background, but at least the outward appearance was that they did well yesterday.
Well, one can only speculate because, let's face it, I think most of the world leaders at this point have already grasped the way that they should handle Donald Trump, and the best way to do that is to be very, very complimentary and keep any criticisms down to an absolute minimum. Macron came here with a mission, a mandate, if you will, to get Donald Trump to stay with the Iranian nuclear deal. The president has made no qualms about the fact that he would like to get out of the deal by any means necessary if he has to. On the 12th of May, he's scheduled to recertify whether or not the Iranians have been in compliance. If you take a look at what's going on at the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, they've been able to go in, make their inspections, determine that the Iranians have been in compliance, but that doesn't seem to be enough because the president has his own agenda. I can only speculate, so I won't go into that. But the United States doesn't necessarily have the leisure to pull out of the deal because, as you know, this was a deal constructed by the P5+1, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, plus Germany. So with Macron...
And once you sign it, it's like any contract. You can't just say, well, I didn't really mean that.
Yeah, but you know what? Based upon Donald Trump's previous behaviors in his business practices, a deal is never a deal until he gets things the way he wants it to be, no matter whether you signed on the dotted line or not. But this is going to be a challenge to him because as of this morning, as a matter of fact, a story came across the Newswire. Newsweek indicated that that the Chinese and the Russians are getting together, forming an alliance, a military alliance, as a matter of fact. And they, in that same article, they indicated that they would do everything that they can to make sure that this deal remains in effect. Now, Macron came here with a little ammunition of his own, indicating that what he would do is to tweak the deal a little bit by adding some other incentives in there that may get the president, Donald Trump, on board. However, I'm not sure whether or not Macron has the authority to do that because he has to work in concert with all the other people who signed on to the deal.
Is there any indication what it is about the deal with Iran that the president doesn't like, other than his predecessor, Obama, is the one who represented the United States and crafted it, and it seems that everything that Obama does, President Trump would like to do away with?
That's an excellent way to frame that question because he hasn't actually been specific as to what he dislikes about the deal, other than the fact that, as you mentioned, because Barack Obama signed that deal, it's a bad deal. It's sort of like him getting out of the Paris Climate Accord, as him walking away from the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It seems as though if Obama had anything to do with the deal, he felt it was a bad deal.
If the Russians and Chinese are getting together on, as you said, militarily and forming some sort of alliance, this has got to affect the upcoming dialogue with North Korea.
Absolutely.
And I would wonder how that might affect, the future.
Well, you know what? Whether or not it's a combination with the Russians and the Chinese on North Korea, I can't specifically say that could be a major event. However, I can say that the North Koreans are watching this situation with the Iranian deal very, very carefully. They have every reason to believe that Donald Trump, any agreement that they would enter with him is not one that would be, sort of like written in water, and you know how stable that is. So one would have to say that that the president, based upon how the North Koreans have been presenting their case. Now, the president has been saying that, oh my goodness, you know, they're talking about no longer testing missiles, no longer doing nuclear testing. But the North Koreans, if you go back and really think this through, the North Koreans said that the only reason why the only time that they would come to the table is when they had reached the goals that they intended to reach. They're there now. And no way, no how have I seen in any way, shape, or form where they would be willing to denuclearize. And when now there seems to be a discussion or disagreement of what denuclearization means. Denuclearization, in my book, means dismantling your nuclear program altogether. And that is just simply not going to happen.
The president also said something yesterday in passing and talking about North Korea that, frankly, for those of us in the free world, was shocking. He actually called Kim Jong-un honorable. He said he's behaving honorably. You know, for somebody who has, incarcerated his own people and has had probably the worst record on human rights and human violations in history, and certainly his father, the history of that country, it would seem a striking statement by an American president. And I have to add that the Trump and all of the Republicans, and you heard it on Fox News, that when Barack Obama said he was going to meet with the North Koreans, they expressed outrage that how could an American president do this? And yet there seems to be a direct flip-flop on the part of the president.
Well, when the president made that statement yesterday, he did leave a lot of jaws dropping because, but I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, because whenever the president finds himself speaking extemporaneously, if he goes off script, he's pretty much liable to say anything. So he could be praising a person today and demonizing them tomorrow, and there seems to be nothing in between that makes a lot of sense to hold these two concepts together.
So I'm going to make a note here. Wait and see. That's what.
That's about what you have to do.
What we ought to do.
Absolutely.
A federal judge in Washington D.C. Came out and supported DACA and said that the government could not simply end the program, and also heavily criticized the government for not presenting much of a case as to why it should be dismantled. What are your thoughts on the future of DACA and the implications of this ruling? Well, it's the third, by the way, it's the third federal judge to come out against the Trump administration.
Well, you know what? I think it's a lot of the folks that are protected right now could have a little bit of hope that they can hold on to with regards to this program. On the other hand, though, we have to get the devil is always in the details, because I got through the copy on that, and the way that decision was written up is that they are giving the president 90 days to come up with a stronger argument to make their case for why DACA should be dismantled. If they can't come up with anything better, then it's something that's going to stay for the mid to long range term. Now, this item that's been put forward by this federal judge indicates that as of right now, the Homeland Security will have to back off a bit. They have to start accepting new applications, because there's a lot of people still out there in the shadows right now. Rightfully so, because with this president, you can't trust anything that he says or does, because he could flip on a dime.
And you could find yourself in another country before you open your eyes.
Precisely. So, yeah, I think a lifeline has been thrown out to the people who are waiting. But again, I've always been of the impression that even if DACA is saved, it really doesn't hold families together, because if the young folks are able to stay, but their parents who brought them in are still subject to arrest, detainment, and deportation, those families will be broken up.
We have about a minute, and I'm just going to ask you a question that probably needs another full segment. More than 40 Republican congressmen said that they would not run for re-election. Many, I think, are frustrated with trying to keep their own values in sync with what the president is saying. Do you think that the president, as the head of his party, will be able to keep unity in the party through the year and, of course, into the midterm election?
I would say doubtful. And one of the reasons that I would put myself on that is because elections, campaigns run on money, and right now it looks like it's a blue wave coming, and the Republicans are going to start running very short on dough because donors are thinking that, well, if this blue wave is coming, it makes no sense to invest. Just let things ride itself out.
The good news is Lee Bynes will be back with us next week with more.
Okay.
And it's always a pleasure to have you with us on.
It's my pleasure as well.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Folks, we will take a break, and you will take a break with us, and we'll be right back with more again.